Good morning. Welcome to the Conway Center for Family Business Educational Program. My name is Jill Hoffmans. I am the Executive Director of the Center, and we welcome you to our program on advisors and why having an advisory board can be a very helpful tool for the success of your family-owned business. If you are watching us live, there are a couple housekeeping items. If you go to the top right of your screen, there's a speaker view and a gallery view. I would recommend having it on whichever one just shows who's talking. So I think it says gallery view, but it's really speaker view. You'll figure it out. And then we will take questions that the panel will field at the end of the session. So feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will get those to them with about 5 minutes to go at the end of the program. So for now, I would like to kick it over to Kelly Borth. She is the founder and chief strategy officer at Greencrest, who is generously sponsoring our program this morning. Kelly is actually an advisory board member of the Conway Center, so this is a great program for her to be sponsoring. So Kelly, take it away.
Thank you, Jill, and good morning, everyone. As Chief Strategy Officer and CEO of Greencrest, a marketing, advertising, PR, and digital marketing firm, like all of you, we are adjusting to this new normal. Needless to say, I did not think that Greencrest would be celebrating our 30th year and serving family business owners in Central Ohio and around the greater Midwest and Eastern region of the US during a health pandemic and 6 feet apart. But here we are. We are proud to serve on the Conway Advisory Board to facilitate the marketing peer group Ignite Your Family Business. I hope you can join us on Tuesday morning, April 28th, to hear from our featured family business owner, Mike Schettinger, with Schettinger Funeral and Cremation Services. We are proud to sponsor today's event. As a business owner, I have benefited from and served as an advisory board member for several Central Ohio businesses. I have also benefited from numerous CEO peer groups, and it's lonely at the top, and especially during times such as this COVID-19 crisis. Now is a time when having access to advisors can be game-changing for you. So let me introduce you to our facilitator for today's discussion, Joel Guth, CEO and founder of Gryphon Financial Partners, who will in turn introduce our panelists this morning. Joel serves as the firm's managing director. He has more than 25 years of experience in wealth planning and has a deep knowledge of complex financial markets, global economic landscapes, and the mergers and acquisitions environment. Joel advises clients regarding their specific investment strategies, appropriate asset allocation, cash flow planning, and estate planning needs. Joel is a trusted advisor for many family business owners, and he's a respected leader in his field as well as in his community. Joel, thank you for leading our discussion today.
Geez, thanks, Kelly. That's about as nice as anybody's spoken about me in a long time. I feel really good about myself now, man. So anyway, let's get to the panel, and we're really privileged to have two exceptional business people who really can come at this from very different angles. So I'm going to turn it over and let Bob. Bob, why don't you introduce yourself first, and then Rhett, we'll go to you and have you.
Sure. Well, thank you, Joel. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bob Coco. I'm the founder and CEO of Choice Property Resources, and we're headquartered in Westerville. What we do is we represent multifamily owners, managers, and developers to set up their residential telecommunication contracts. We're in our 21st year of business, and we have a staff of 23. We currently represent over 4,000 communities with about 320,000 units. And we have properties we represent in all 50 states. Right now, our company is finalizing a succession plan where I will be moving out from the day-to-day involvement into more of a board role. And we have an organization in place to move forward.
Thanks, Bob. Rhett, you want to take a few minutes and introduce yourself?
Well, good morning. Good morning to everybody, and hopefully everybody's being safe at home and taking care of yourself. I'm a second generation in our family. Our first generation was my father, 1953, got in the automobile business. And since my brother Fred and I, 1981, did trial by fire during the recession. And we now have 7 family members in our business. We're in the transportation and we're in the financing business. We also have some Harley Davidson dealerships and things of that order. But I'm real happy to share our thoughts with you. Our family's had an advisory board for about 25 years, so I got a pretty good handle on how to some of the questions we're going to have, and hopefully help everyone out this morning.
And I think one of the really unique pieces of this group and the two of you is that Rhett has been working with an advisory board for so many years and can bring a really deep perspective and has gone through some changes and evolution. Bob is just transitioning to start one with himself included on the board to help his son. So Bob, if you would, why don't you give us kind of a current overview of the advisors you're using and kind of what prompted you maybe to start forming your advisory board, and then we'll turn it to Rhett and let him talk about his experience.
Sure. Just one correction. We did, as a company, start up in January of 1999. But we added a board member advisor back in 2009, which was our 10th year. We actually started with 2 advisors, one with operations experience and the other one more financial background. Both had excellent executive management experience. But of the 2, we have one that's still left. And the reason I did that was to add somebody to provide an outside viewpoint, to provide a sounding board and help me put an organizational structure to the company to take it to the next level. I was stuck in the weeds of the business, running the day-to-day, and I got to the point where I was honest with myself. I needed help to grow the business, and I needed to find time to work on the business, not just in the business. And the advisor I found, who's still with us, we had worked together previously. It was coincidental that it was right at a point where he had retired but wanted to get back into business through a consulting role, and I was in need of a board, and it's been a good fit for us.
Bob, if you can, just talk for a second. What skills specifically did he have that you felt really would be additive to your process?
He had run a number of large organizations, and because I had reported to him in one company, I saw his expertise on how to put a structure together for an organization position to grow. I was in admiration of his skill sets, communication skills. He was strong in many areas, especially in finance and operations, organizational processes. But I guess that was the key reason I reached out to him. As I said, the timing was good as well.
Great. Rhett, would you mind giving a little brief background on kind of how your board formed? I know you were instrumental in forming it when you took over. If you would just kind of fill everybody in, that'd be great.
Well, parallel with Bob, after about 10 years of operations, we figured in the early 1990s that we were scaling pretty fast. Our growth rate was pretty fast. And just about the time you think you know everything, you know nothing. And it started with our CPA firm. I took one of the managing partners from the CPA firm and also someone from the industry that was an executive with Ford Motor Company who was a friend and retired. And we started with a small group and with a local business attorney here in town that does real estate work. And then we slowly built from there. It took about 4 to 5 years. That's advice I can give everybody. Don't be in a big hurry to throw everybody on your advisory board. You know, be selective and be preemptive, and try to have a group of people that bring different perspectives to you, because 5 people thinking the same thing aren't going to get you anywhere. So in our case, we have a consumer behavior professor that sits with us. We have a family planning person, Dick Emmons, obviously, with the Conway Center. We have a business attorney here in Columbus. We have an executive manufacturer. We also have a big software CEO, national software CEO that really helps us out with our tech. And you kind of fill all the slots you kind of have questions about. And as I said, we built it over time and got the right people. Now, the big issue we have right now is a transition, because we now are in Generation 3. We have 7 family members in our company. They're active, and they are currently picking out and replacing the advisory board, because this was my brother Fred's in my advisory board for the past 25 years. And it's now their chance to get their team together.
So Rhett, what advice are you giving that next generation as they look at, because clearly these are advisors you trust, people you really value. Talk a little bit about that transition, and what are you telling the next generation to think about, and how is that handoff going?
Well, the first thing is you got to let them know this isn't a fraternity party. You're not inviting people onto your advisory board. They're going to be your friends. That are going to be out there and telling everything you want to hear, make you comfortable. I like my advisory board because they make me uncomfortable, and they bring in different perspectives, and they know I listen. Another bit of advice is, if you have an advisory board and if you don't follow their thoughts, and you don't respect their thoughts, and you don't appreciate their thoughts, you're not going to have very good board members. You have to be able to be listening, and you have to execute when you see things that need to be done, point it out. And you have to have a relationship with them that's cordial and professional, and yet you both understand that this world's spinning pretty fast, and you need these people on your side to give you good suggestions on how to take the right path. And sometimes it's not the path you're taking; it's sometimes the path you're not taking. And the path you're on, they can re-solidify the fact that you're on the right path, and there isn't an executive out there today or an entrepreneur running a small or big business. My dad always says, you wake up in the middle of the night thinking, am I doing the right thing? And I think Bob can concur with that. Am I on the right track? Am I really doing the right thing? And that's what an advisory board's for. I always thought that they helped me re-solidify the fact that, yes, we're on the right track, but if we're not on the right track, I got some, we will listen, and we will take strong consideration, and we will make changes if needed.
Bob, where do you see the advisory board, and you have the one advisor today. I know you mentioned you're thinking of yourself as another member of that advisory board as you transition, potentially looking to add others. What's the evolution for you right now as you think about it? Where do you see the advisory board in a year or 2 years?
Where we're at right now is I am stepping away from the business. I'm fortunate I have 2 children that are interested and have been working in the business. My son, Mike, has been with Choice for 18 years, started the business and worked his way up, and he's now been the president for 5 years. My daughter, Jennifer, has been with the company for 4 years, started as an account executive, is now a national sales executive. But we have an organizational structure, not just with Mike, but with 3 vice presidents. So we have a solid day-to-day organization in place, but I will be stepping away, and I will become board member number 2. I would consider myself an industry expert since I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I'm a generalist that I can still provide day-to-day guidance. So I will be the second member, but the goal in the next 1 to 2 years is to expand to a total of 3. And we've already gone through a process of looking as to what our needs are, and one of the needs is in the area of marketing and business development, and another one is telecommunication technology. And as I work to bring in those 2 individuals, I will bring them onboarding, and then I'll step away.
Rhett, what about you? I know you've added somebody new. I think the software CEO is your latest addition, if I remember correctly. But where do you see, in conversations with the next generation, where do you see the board kind of evolving for them in the next couple of years?
Well, the first thing is we involved the family members. They earn their way onto the advisory board meetings. We meet 3 times a year, and they're all well set up. We have an agenda, have a discussion. Starts at 10 o'clock, ends at 3. It's not one of these all night things. We don't have a dinner the night before. We don't have a dinner the night after. We eat through lunch and work through lunch. And I think the advisory board members like that. These are very well-heeled, experienced, smart people. and they don't like wasting time. I haven't met a lot of smart people that like to waste time. So they want to make sure the agenda's action-packed and they know where it is. And so the family members, we now only have 2 of the 7 that actually sit on the advisory board. They're helping form the next board, and there'll be other members as they come on. And they're going to form it based, and they get a chance to see what we've been doing. But I will really want them to have their own twist to it. I want them to have their own people and their own, the way they see the world forming, because doggone it, they're going to be in there running this business every day. And I don't want them to think that, you know, grandpa is in there telling them what to do. You know, and the hardest thing to do, I'll never forget my father on the showroom floor, one of the local bankers there, and he said, "Hey, Paul, how come you're coming into the showroom and I see your boys are running everything just fine?" And my dad told him, he goes, "You know, I just like being here to see how well things are being run. It really makes me feel good." You know, and I'm sure Bob feels the same way. When you build a company and you're in there every day and you know you can lose it at any moment, and then you have some people in there running your business with you and for you at a very high level, it feels pretty good. So I want them to make these decisions. I want them to decide who they want to have, how they want to contribute, how they want to structure their meetings. They might decide to change that too.
Will you stay on the advisory board?
Well, that's a good question. You know, in your business, and I see this a lot, when you build your business, when my father used to walk through our dealership, he started in 1953. Although my brother and I were running the business, he was still Mr. Ricart. You know, he still was the founder. He was Mr. Ricart. And many of the people in our company right now, this year, we have someone celebrating in July their 50th year of employment at the company. And to them, you know, I'm Mr. Ricart and my brother Fred's Mr. Ricart. This generation 2 is Mr. Ricart. So,
Yeah.
So I try not to be in there. I'm pretty active with the National Auto Dealer Association. I'm currently chairman. I've been there for 6 years. I go to DC, you know, a week a month. So I try to keep my way, stay out of their way. But at the same time, they like talking to you. And with modern technology, they call you and Skype you or FaceTime you, and they always need advice. And I think Bob and I will always be there for them. So I guess to run the meetings in the future are going to be run by the next generation. They're not going to be run by myself. I might participate. I'll sit there and listen and give them my thoughts. But they have the reins now, but they'll definitely have the reins here in the next couple of years.
If you could, I remember when we talked before kind of in preparation for this meeting, you were talking about the addition of the software CEO and why you thought that was important. And I thought that really hit a good point of, you know, you seeing the industry evolve, the business evolve. If you could just maybe for a few minutes, if you're comfortable, talk about how you kind of came to that conclusion to add the software piece, because that was the newest piece, correct?
True, and I think Bob's going through this too. He kind of figured out who could give him the most, whether it was financing or technology advice. In our case, in the automobile and we're in the financing business too. I needed to have a kind of a wide path, a wide breadth of knowledge as well as deep knowledge. So I let the next generation go through there and pick out this software person. And as I said, it's a very significant software company in the country and very bright. Wow. When you meet someone that comes from another level than it's always an eye opener. And I think that's important. What comes next after this? I guess I'm going to have a health expert sitting on my advisory board. I don't know. I don't know what the world's bringing us, but you know, you have to be open-minded. You don't know. You know, right. I think maybe a human resource expert from a company bigger than ours, from a bigger environment. Maybe ran a bigger health and human resource department for a Fortune 500 company. These are suggestions. We sit and talk, by the way. We don't operate in a vacuum. This isn't a cocoon. We like to talk and think things through. So ironically, human resources, I think is going to be a huge thing, especially as we see this exponential change we're going to see that we're experiencing now on what we consider business as unusual or business as usual, right?
Or at least you're going to need somebody with a tape measure to make sure everybody stays 6 feet apart, right? I mean, at a minimum. Yeah.
Well, you might think that, but what's happening around the world, you know, it's kind of funny because we all pay attention, don't we? And we see how China's coming out of this latest pandemic because they were in the deepest and the hardest, and we saw the behavioral changes for consumers has dramatically changed to online, and people they're avoiding mass transit, where we've been in the mobility mode for years and years. And all of a sudden, they don't want mass transit. They don't feel safe. And I think everyone's going to be a little bit of a germaphobe a little bit for a period of time. This isn't going to go away anytime soon. So those are the type of things we look. We try to look ahead for an advisor. We're a little late on the tech person. I think that our tech person came in a little late. We could have used them like a year ago or two. But you know, it's like everybody's got 20/20 vision in the rearview mirror. So.
Sure. Bob, you mentioned adding a marketing person. So maybe kind of combine the discussion around how did you find the advisor that you've had for a number of years? How did that kind of happen? And then as you think about that marketing person, how are you thinking about finding them?
It's a good question. Well, how the first one came about, I think I alluded to it earlier. It was a fellow I had worked for before, and he had retired early. And then at some point, he decided he wanted to get, I'd say, back in the game, not running a business, but from a consulting standpoint. He reached out to me. And it was just at the same time that I was thinking I need some help. So that worked out well. But going forward, I would say the resources you want to look at is through some networking, some other people you know that you admire in other companies that you can network with. It could be a family member. I don't see that in our case, but that's an opportunity as well. So does that answer your question?
Sure.
Hey,
Yeah.
Joel, can I interrupt really quick? I was remiss to tell you that the Conway Center has a list of folks who are willing to serve on advisory boards from a very diverse backgrounds. So if anybody would like that list, let me know, let Amy know. info@familybusinesscenter.com is a good email to use, and I can send that out. And if anybody who's listening would like to be on that list, let me know, and we can talk about how to go about doing that. But we are a resource in that regard.
I don't want to give Kelly and Greencrest a plug, Bob, but we hired Kelly a few months ago to work with us on some marketing and PR. And I will tell you, she would be a great resource to have a discussion with. We found her very, very thoughtful. So we've enjoyed that. Rhett, maybe, well, Bob, let me follow on with one other question. So if you were advising somebody who didn't have any real formal advisors around them and they're looking to start, what skills, again, I know it's issue specific to the business, but where would you have them kind of think about starting? Both, you know, who should they look to initially? What kind of people should they be thinking about? I know Rhett mentioned his CPA, which would seem to be a natural kind of transition to somebody, but what advice would you have to somebody who said, okay, yeah, I get it. I need some advisors around me. Where do you tell them to start?
Well, the first thing I would do if I didn't have a board, it's what I call an indirect board. And I use my indirect board quite frequently. My indirect board is the law firm that I have business with, our accounting firm that we have business with. As far as human resources, we use ADP as our PEO, a private employer organization. ADP, you talked about HR needs. ADP has around 250 to 270,000 employees, and they're totally on top of HR issues and what's going on, and we use them a lot. And another area of this indirect board is we have a consultant who specializes in the area of sales. So I'd start with my indirect board. But then as far as looking beyond for adding to the board, I would look at it just like you would if you were hiring an executive for your company. There's got to be a good cultural fit. They have to have the business experience and acumen to help give you direction. You want a specific area of expertise. And also you want to make sure they have an interest in helping you, because some of this is altruistic, that a good board member wants to help and they want to see you succeed. So I guess that's the process I would go through.
Rhett, kind of picking up from there, you mentioned, your first two were the gentleman at the CPA firm and then the Ford executive. If you were giving somebody some advice who was just starting, what would you say to them? What words of wisdom would you give them?
Well, that's a pretty easy question to answer. The first thing is that like Bob, I like the CPA because you're gonna have somebody put the numbers together for you to make sense when you have your meetings, right? And the second thing is, I got an industry giant to come on the board in the automobile industry. 80% of our business is in the automotive field. So an industry giant that's been at 80,000 feet, he's seen things we haven't seen across North America. And it really behooves me to have someone to that level. They're not free. You got to compensate your advisors well. I like to pay for their time and their efforts. And if they travel, I have one that travels from California, another one from South Florida. I take care of their time and it's well worth every cent. I've never walked out of it thinking, my goodness gracious, that was an advisory board meeting I didn't get anything out of. So usually you come out of there and you're buzzing and shaking. You're so excited. You kind of know, as I said before, you're on the right track or not. But yeah, it's you started with us too. And then the other thing, we're in the automobile business, so we're in the consumer business. So I got someone that's an expert in consumer behavior. That's what it's all about, right? And then the next thing is our family was buying real estate and development. So I got an attorney here in Columbus who's well known for putting big tracts of land together in real estate and that. And then the next one I got together was with the family and the succession plan. And that's where Mr. Emmons came in, because there's no one smarter than he is when it comes to family planning, succession, estate planning, et cetera. There's nobody better. I call him Yoda, by the way, out of Star Wars. But, that's how you build it. Now we have a software person that's in it with it too. That really helps us. And as I said before, probably the next addition will be someone from the human resource environment, because, we have about 600 employees and we're getting bigger. And you get better playing golf with someone that's a better golfer. You play better tennis if you have a better tennis player than you are.
Sure.
And
right.
If you're going to build your business, you got to have somebody that knows how to run a business better than you do. So I try to hire in all the Michael Jordans and Tom Brady's I can.
Yeah. And a side note, when we started Gryphon 6 years ago, we came from Morgan Stanley, had been around markets and business for 20 years. And so we thought we understood what running a business was like. And very quickly we realized we had no clue what running a business was, right? And so you can understand a balance sheet and an income statement, and not know a doggone thing about running a business. And our first advisor, you say Yoda, was a gentleman who was in his 70s, who had run a big business, who was kind enough to help us, who just saw the world in a different way and had a great macro business perspective. And we probably wouldn't have made it without him, because he was there and had the personality too. You commented, Rhett, that they may not always tell you what you like, but he didn't care if I got mad. He didn't care how mad I got at him. He was going to tell me the truth, and he knew more than I did. And he would smack me back into place, which was exactly what I needed.
Hey, you'll love this, Joel, because one of the first ads I had was a gentleman that's still on my board that was a managing partner in one of the big 8 firms here in Columbus, and sat on 2 of the very large Fortune 500 companies we have in Columbus. And the first thing is my controller, or my CFO, did not have a good relationship with him at first, because, this guy was a managing partner in a big firm, and he's saying, no, these things aren't tying in. I mean, if they don't tie in, they mean nothing. And I got to tell you, it was a very frictional environment there at first, but it was a healthy friction, and that's what you need. You need,
absolutely.
You need to have that.
Bob, what do you think the most difficult thing as you think about building your board here? What is it that comes to mind that you just say, oh my gosh, that's a big hurdle?
I guess making sure it's a good cultural fit. That's the biggest thing I would concern with. I covered a couple of other topics on this already, but culture.
Yeah. Rhett, what do you think the most difficult thing has been for you having the board for 20 plus years?
Well, I'm going to parallel Bob's observation of culture. I have two members of my advisory board that usually get into a big argument every meeting. And I kind of enjoy it. And everybody in the whole board enjoys it because I have one of my board members that's very, very creative. And I have one of my board members that's a little bit more nuts and bolts and follow the line. And always during a meeting, they're laughing. They end up laughing with each other to argue with each other. And that's what builds the dynamics for a great board. That group of people, that they have, I think the most important thing is they all have to have thick skin. If your advisory board members don't have thick skin and the dealer, or should I say the owner of the business doesn't have thick skin, it'll never work because everyone is, you've heard it before, everybody's thinking the same things. You don't need one of the people in the room. I can tell you, everybody has thick skin, and it's worked out good for us for 25 years, thick skin. And if they don't have thick skin, quite frankly, it wasn't a good fit. And our family luckily, through all these years, have never had a problem with an advisor that says, well, I'm stepping off the board because of this, or, I don't like this person, or no drama. It's all business. As I said, 10 to 3, let's get through it. Let's hear what everybody's got to say. Everybody's got thick skin. Let's tell us what you know. I got some brilliant people on the board. I want them all smarter than me. And let's talk about it and end up leaving the room and it works out great. And that's Bob's cultural thing. You got to have a culture of people in there that have your best interest in mind, but at the same time are going to just shake the tree. I don't want them to come in there and tell me how great I am. I mean, there isn't a business out there that Bob or I couldn't walk into tomorrow morning and find something wrong with it, and that's what we want. That's what we want to hear.
Bob, as you think about that cultural fit, maybe a couple words of advice, how would you tell somebody to evaluate that or think about that, or what advice would you give them as they start talking to candidates or potential people?
Well, as I said, it's kind of like hiring an executive. So I guess you just got to find the right skill set, expertise, see what your needs are, and so forth.
Rhett, obviously we're in a time of stress right now. How do you engage your advisors, or do you engage them in between board meetings? Talk a little bit about just how you use them informally or formally as a question comes up, and share a little thought there.
Well, before I get there, I feel a little remiss. One of my advisory board members is from the banking industry too. He just joined it this past summer. I got him. I sat on another board with him, and I said, if you ever retire and you're kind of bored, you let me know. And some of these advisory, if you want the good ones, you got to work for them. You just can't send them a letter and say, gee, would you do this?
Right.
Oh no, you got,
Right.
It's like a great employee in your organization. If you want the good ones, you got to work for them.
Yep.
You got to really show them you want them bad in your company. I'm real lucky to have him in there, because especially right now, think of the whole banking industry right now. I don't know, repeat your question real quick. I kind of lost track of that there.
I did too, because I was listening to your story about banking. Jill, you remember what it was?
We're all waiting on our PPP check, so we're kind of all excited about that this morning.
Those are coming today, are they?
Well, they've been coming.
I hadn't gotten the memo.
Wow.
I don't remember either. I haven't had enough caffeine this morning.
Oh, okay, that's okay. Well, listen,
We'll move on. We'll move on.
Keep moving on with it.
We do have a question, if we want to just field it real quick. Rhett, you alluded to it. What about, can you elaborate on compensation advisory fees that you pay? I know it runs the gamut for everybody.
Yeah, not specifics, obviously, just generalities.
Yeah.
It's real simple. I pay them all exactly the same. I pay them a flat fee and all their expenses to get there. If they got to spend overnight, I fly them all first class. Treat them. I mean, they're used. That's what they deserve. Trust me. They appreciate it. And we schedule them out months and months ahead of time. Oh, your question was, what are we doing during this pandemic?
It's so funny. I just
glad
remembered
you asked
me
that. That's a great question, because we just yesterday we had a board meeting scheduled for April 27th, And we had to change that to a telephonic meeting. We're mailing out all the balance sheets and all the performance things to them. And then we're going to have a telephonic meeting instead. And the difficulty I see in telephonic meetings in which the NADA, we have multiple meetings every day. I have 3 more after this. Is that it seems as though when you're on telephonic meetings, everybody's a lot more cordial and nice and complacent, and they're all talking about coronavirus, and they're really out of their comfort zone, and they really don't want to talk about the hard issues. And I got to tell you something, you know, this is going to have to change. We're going to have to realize whether it's telephonic or Skype or Zoom or whatever it is, you know, we got to speak the truth, whether it's over the television or whether it's person to person. So these board meetings that are on telephonic and or advisory board meetings, we need to learn to pay attention. We got to bring up the same issues with the same passion, with the same narrative to make sure everybody understands specifically what needs to be done or has been done or could be done.
Do you engage your board members in between meetings?
Some of them I do. Yes, some of them I do. But it's ironic, and Bob will tell you this, your advisory board will call you. I don't need to engage them.
Yeah.
You know, obviously here in the last 3 weeks, they've all been calling, you know, and that's a good advisory board. You know, it keeps them, you know, let's think about it for a minute. If you're running a big company, big organization, and Bob and I are going to think about this too, you know, there's never an exit plan, right? There's a strategy, you know, and hopefully it works, but whether it does or not. And a lot of these people want to help you. They really want to help you because they're not in the middle of the fight like they were for 30 or 40 years in their old profession or what they used to do. So they really enjoy someone that needs help and listens and takes things to heart and appreciates their input. Bob will concur with that, I'm sure.
It's
Yeah,
funny.
Joel, I'd like to
Please.
step
Yeah,
in on
jump
that
in.
one. As far as you're talking about beyond the board meeting itself, the structured meeting, are they involved? I think you need to get that clarified up front. And I would say that I want them to be available for maybe a certain number of hours per quarter where I could reach out to them, because things do come up outside of a quarterly board meeting. You would also ask a question, but the point I want to make is that ought to be part of the initial discussion or your final discussions before you come to an agreement. So you know you have that resource available to you. But as far as compensation, it depends where your company is on the life cycle. When I brought in our current board member, I had brought the company to a certain level. So the way he's getting compensated is on a retainer plus an incentive of moving our NOI from X to and above. So as we grow the business beyond X NOI, he shares in that. And then there was also a long-term kicker as far as the progress over a number of years. So I have it structured more as an incentive plan added to a retainer. So that's something people might want to consider, because you've already worked hard. If you're bringing in your first or second board member, you've already worked very hard to grow the business. Let's see them sweat a little bit, if you will, to make sure the numbers actually play out as to what they think they can bring to the company.
Sure. Yeah. To really, you make sure it's additive, right? Now,
Yes.
Bob,
And,
with that,
well, if I could I add to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's another way that I'm working with our board member a little differently as well. Part of that retainer, he's more involved in the day-to-day. He does individual personnel development of our executive team and our managers. So his compensation's a little larger than what a typical board member would be. Again, we're using him for that extra work. So he was interested, and he, like Rhett just mentioned, sometimes they come to you with ideas. And we have a program called Imagine 2025, where we have an idea of where we want to take the company in the next 4 to 5 years from an organizational structure standpoint. And so he's the one that came up with that concept, and we're working to develop our overall organization with his direct help.
Yeah, hey,
Great.
Joe, I can
Yeah,
add
please, Rhett,
something.
jump in.
Yeah, I can add something to that. Yeah, what we're going through right now is a little different. You know, we went through 2009, our board together during that global meltdown. That was a pretty interesting time. There's a lot of phone calls going back and forth, a lot of conversation. The care factor was there. A lot of these situations need a lot of communication. My mother always said, you can, not three things you can never do enough of in life. You know, it's love, give, and over communicate, you know, and she's been right ever since. And so you got to over communicate. I invite the advisors to talk. I invite the advisors to give me thoughts. They send me articles out of magazines. They email me things. And it's that part of that conversation. And it's like everything else. If they appreciate their efforts, and like Bob does, to make sure they got their head in the game all the time, it makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference.
It does. It was, you know, when we went through a kind of a little strategic planning, as I'm sure everybody did, right, with their business when this all hit and it was unwinding, and our advisors participated. And one of them sent me a little Mike Tyson quote when Mike Tyson was knocking out Spanx, and he said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And he goes, remember, the plan we just crafted may need to change, be flexible. And he's been in contact constantly. And it really is nice not to have just his advice, but the fact that he's reaching out and staying in touch during these times. So we'll wrap up. Bob, any parting thoughts? If you had to leave everybody with kind of one piece of advice, it can be as simple as, if you don't have advisors, you better go get them, or it can be complex. What would you leave everybody with?
I think it's a couple things. I would have, if I had something to do differently, I would have gotten the advisors in place earlier. I mentioned I got the first advisor in place in 2009, and in the 10th year, I would recommend something earlier that, and our expansion now here in the 21st year. So I think do things a little quicker. And you want to make sure, one of the downsides of what I just described, of having our advisor immersed in the day-to-day in certain ways, that could become a conflict with your existing management team, where the advisor's used to running his own business, and all of a sudden, you know, he sees the young guy, you know, not quite living up to his esteem or his abilities, but yet there can be a conflict there. So just a word of caution. We worked our way through that issue. All's well, but it can potentially be a conflict with the existing leadership.
Rhett, what kind of parting advice would you leave everybody with?
Well, first I'd wash my hands. That's important. Keep distance. And I'm not joking about it. It's really the truth. That's probably going to be the business, as I said, business as usual, business unusual. Ben Franklin once said, the right decision made too late is the wrong decision, right? And I encourage everyone to strongly look at advisory. Don't be afraid of making the wrong choice. Get involved with it. Form it. Make it your own little brain trust that you have. And as I said, you know, Tiger Woods has a swing coach, and Jack Nicklaus had a swing coach, and they all got advisors, you know, to help them run their professional. Tom Brady has advisors. I don't care who you are, you know, and surround yourself with these really smart people. Treat them with respect. Appreciate it. You can't say you appreciate it enough, and you'll be really amazed on how well you'll sleep at night, because you have a real good idea of where you're at, where you're going, how you're going to get there. And as you said before, when you get punched in the face, you're not alone. You got somebody to sit next to you and talk with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bob, Rhett. Thank you. Jill, questions? And I'll turn it over to you. If there's anything you want to come from the audience, have at it.
Thank you, Joel. The two questions, one that came over text, but another one here on chat. Do you want your advisors, lawyer, accountant, etc., on your board, or do you want different opinions, skills than those already providing you advice? So there are two schools of thoughts on advisory board. Having your own attorney on the board or having someone else so you don't get into the, not that it's necessarily a conflict of interest, but the yes person mentality. So they want to stay your lawyer, right? So will they really challenge you if they're on your board? So some people say, absolutely not, don't have your own attorney on the board. And other people say, oh, for sure, why wouldn't you? They know your business and they have your best interest at heart. So what are your thoughts on having your own people on the board?
I'll step in on that one. I would prefer that they weren't on the board. I wouldn't go to them. I already have them, as I said, as an indirect board. They're already a resource for me. I would rather have somebody else on the board who could also be critical of their services. And so that the board member is more independent as to the big picture issues that you're dealing with. So I would prefer they not be on the board. Right? What do you think?
I concur.
Wow, that's quick.
Wow, wow, Rhett, wow, that threw me. Okay, next question. What about having key non-family members on your board, either sitting in at board meetings or actually serving on your board? Rhett?
Well, I'll give you, I'm glad you asked that question. Thank you very much for asking that question. As you know, we have several Generation 3 in the business, and as they work their way up the totem pole, as we say, and they have different jobs, they have to be evaluated, don't they? And they're evaluated by other family members that are in the business, as well as their peers that are working with us. But also, once a year, all the family members are interviewed by my advisory board. And the advisory board sits in there without myself or my brother, partners, and interviews them for over an hour. Some take a lot longer, talking these questions about where they see themselves in the company, what kind of skill set they think they have. They have their performance and KPIs from their different divisions that they've been running, how they feel about working with the other family members, and questions I have no idea about. But I know that with this group of people that have managed large groups of people their entire life and can recognize talent when they see it, that all the kids, my one son came out there and he came in there and he goes, I'd rather testify in federal court than go through that again. But it's good for him, it's healthy for him, because too many times Bob or myself, the founders, the person running the company, family members, they think that we might have a thumb on them, or it's our opinion, or we might not like them, or they're not my child, they're my brother's child or something. So we got an independent third party, and that's a vetting process, and all the Generation 3 go through it, every one of them, every year at one of the board meetings with the advisory board, and it makes the Generation thing know they're accountable to someone other than myself, and it lets them know that they're going to be in a room, probably 200 years of brain power in there, and they better have their game together. So, Bob?
I will only be looking for non-family members to be on the board. Having said that, I'm going to be on the board, as I've already explained, for a short period of time. It's meant to be a transitional period. I don't want to be on the board forever. Quite frankly, I've done my time in the business world. I'd rather enjoy retirement. Although I enjoy what I do, I want to be free to come and go as I please, but I don't expect a family member to be on the board.
Yeah, so I think the question was key non-family members, employees, should they? So if your COO or your CFO or your
Okay, I
general
misunderstood.
manager, yeah, sorry, I wasn't clear. But anyway, so the three of you, oh, go ahead, Rhett, did you want to say something?
No, I was going to say, if you're a CEO, that means you're chief everything officer. Because you have to have a little, and I'll tell you this, you have to know a little bit about technology, you got to know a little bit about HR, you got to know a little bit about operations, you got to know a little bit about everything, and that's what a CEO is, right? They have a vision, or they have a vision that they want to have it completed, but you have to have a talent of that many different things, knowledge of all those things. You don't have to be an expert, but you have to have a knowledge in all those different things. When it comes to family members on it, I like seeing them getting totally immersed in everything, And at some point in time, if I feel a need or the next generation wants me in on the board meeting and they want me to be part of it, you know, and I am a family member, I'm fine with it.
So to the three of you, we've talked about forming your own advisory board and what those advisors maybe should look like or how they work for your family businesses, but all three of you have served on boards. What would you say to the family business owners about being an advisor, sort of the care and keeping of your advisory board members? What is your advice as a board member to the CEO? How should you run an advisory board meeting? How should you treat those advisors from your own experience as sitting on a board?
I'll step in. I found it exhilarating. I found it personally rewarding to be on a board, to be able to share what I believe to be my business acumen and expertise. And I want to help. I do want to bring new ideas to their firm. And I enjoyed being in a position of the 30,000-foot view, looking at things at a macro basis. And I think that's an area that I enjoyed providing some sort of guidance in that arena. And it's fun to watch the progress. And lastly, I would say it was fun for me to deal with complex critical thinking issues that sometimes the executive level people are stuck on a particular issue. And if I could come in and get a different viewpoint, provide some complementary feedback or other direction, I found that to be rewarding.
Mr. Chairman of the board up there, Mr. Ricart, how's that experience for you differently than being the one convening a board for your business?
Well, I think you learn a lot from everyone you meet in your life. You learn a lot. I've been on the Convention Center board for 20 years now. And I learned a lot from that environment, the public boards. I learned a lot from being on a board on a school board. I learned a lot from all these different things. Collaboration, understanding each other, having an effective meeting, having people in the meeting that are going to be brutally honest. That's a tough word. Let's say honest with a lot of clarity. I like to have board members that vet things. I've always been so proud of the Convention Center board. We've done a lot of great things downtown Columbus, and the leadership of Sally and Don and the rest is the fact that we have board meetings and we don't agree with each other a lot. And it's great, especially, and you like to see that because we take the public interest so in mind. So a lot of that skill set you learn from outside, you can take inside. I think that if you have family members that you're transitioning your business into, I strongly encourage you to have them sit on outside boards on other companies. I don't care if it's in their church, in their school system, a nonprofit, whatever it may be. Have them involved with those boards. It will dramatically help them understand the dynamics of running good, effective advisory board meetings for your own company, because you'll learn a lot of different skills of listening as much as talking.
That's great advice. Joel, what about you and your board service? What would you say if someone asked you to sit on their board? How would you vet that company and decide, okay, I will spend my time and energy helping?
You know, I think much to what Brett alluded to, you've got to find an environment. And if you're the leader of the advisory board, you really have got to want to listen and learn. And I think that if you're going to have these people in there, or I'm going to serve on a board, which, you know, I've served on several, the most effective have been where the people really want to hear opinions, not explain what they know. And a mentor of mine gave me great advice. He said, there's a reason God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. When you talk, you tell us what you know. When you listen, you learn. And I think that's the key is, you know, for me, it's finding a culture where they want the honest opinion that Rhett referred to. They really want to hear what their advisors have to say. And I think the key, if you're the owner of the business with the advisory board, is make sure you and your team go in there, not to defend, but really to just listen and learn. and encourage that honest feedback.
Yeah, and I agree. Joel, in addition with that very quickly, is that I mentioned earlier about two of my advisory board members that one of them is extremely creative and the other one's kind of baseline on thinking, but that's how you find answers and solutions, because if the answer was right in front of us on a chalkboard, we all can read it. But this world right now is so dynamic. It's so dynamic and it's so it immerses itself in so many different directions at the same time that you need to have these type of creative thinkers in a room. They're going to bring up ideas that you might think are crazy, but doggone it, you know, this pandemic, what people thought might have been crazy too. So you have to be able to generate that collaborative, creative energy within your organization, within your advisory board. At the same time, you know, let's look at the numbers too. That's all part of the thing. You got to know where you're at today and kind of where we're going, but you need that creative energy in there. I have never walked out of an advisory board meeting, at least the group that I have, and I'm not bragging because doggone it, it's true. I walk out of that meeting, and I'll tell you, it's almost like Christmas for me. It's like I just came down to Christmas because I feel so good because I you know, it's that euphoric feeling is like saying, yeah, I'm on the right track, or two, I got some issues I got to work on, man. You know, and I kind of put them off. And I procrastinated on them, but I can't procrastinate any longer because I'm not coming back to this next meeting here in another 90 days and have to explain to this group of people why I didn't get the job done.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, we have one last question before our time is up. How does the advisory board interact with the stockholders? Anybody?
Well, there's only 2 stockholders in our business, so it's very easy. We interact with them every time we meet. You know, so that's easy. I don't know, Bob, Rhett?
Well, our quarterly meetings are broken up into 3 parts, much more expansive as compared to what Rhett does. But one day is an operational meeting, going through all the functional areas. The next day is a part of the day is for senior leadership only, and the third part is corporate officers and the board. So that third meeting, it is the board of advisors working with the primary shareholders. So there is interaction quarterly, and we are also now doing an annual directors meeting where the board members would be involved with each of the shareholders in that meeting.
Rhett, what about you? How does your board interact with your stockholders?
Well, as my father always said, if you're a 51% owner, you're a 99% owner. But is it voting stock or just Class B stock? I mean, okay, so in our case, our family has different stock things. We have grats for the family members that are involved. So I guess we talk to all of our stockholders all the time. And any of the family members that have been in the business for more than 3 to 5 years and they performed at a high level, we include them in on the program. And that's how they are. So I guess they you know, transparency is the most important thing. You know, I see too many entrepreneurs get estate planning and succession planning confused. They think they're the same thing. You know, hey, I got a good life and I got a good life. Hey, I figured that thing out. I know. No. Succession planning. What are you doing to prepare the legacy of your business for years to come? So
Great point.
We include all the stockholders in all those decisions.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, very much. We are at the end of our time. Joel Guth from Gryphon Financial Partners, one of our service provider members. Thank you very much for facilitating our panel with Rhett.
Sure,
and Bob
enjoyed
Coco. We appreciate your time, and we will see you next month. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See ya.